Okay, good morning. Today this is for primary school. That's those that want to write primary six examination. Okay, so today I'm talking about proportion, which is similar to the last topic I talked about, which is variation. Now, proportion also deals with comparing two or more quantities. Okay, this is what the primary school level. Okay, we have two types of proportion. As you can see, we have direct proportion and we have inverse proportion. Now, in indirect proportion, both quantities increase or decrease together. Okay, that means that in direct proportion, as the first quantity increases, the other one increases. Example, you can see like the popular example I like giving. Okay, let's say you want to buy a pen. A pen costs 20 naira, so two pen costs 14 naira. So the more pen, the more money, and the less pen, the less money. Now, in inverse proportion, an increase in one leads to a decrease in another, and vice versa. So it means in inverse proportion, as one quantity increases, the other decreases, or as one quantity decreases, the other increases. For instance, people that are working, okay, let's say it takes a boy to sweep a whole street. For instance, a boy to sweep a street, okay, that's the word of a street in let's say 14 hours. Okay, so if it is just a boy, 14 hours. So if we have 10 boys, you see now, because the number of time increases from 1 to 1 is equal to 14 hours. So when it becomes 10 boys, 10 boys, okay, you discover that the time is going to what? Decrease. One boy is 14, okay. So for 10 boys, you expect in a normal logic sense that the time it will take the 10 boys will be quicker. So that's an example of inverse proportion. So an increase in one in inverse proportion leads to a decrease in another, and an increase in another leads to decrease. So the point is, how do you know whether it's inverse proportion or it's direct proportion? It's important that you try to think about it before you solve. So I'm going to take two questions here today quickly. The first one say, I'm gonna buy 6 biscuits for 180 naira. What is the cost of 8 such biscuits? Now it's obvious that this is direct proportion. How do you know? Because the more biscuits I buy, the more money I have to pay. Okay, so if I buy lesser biscuit, I pay less money. If I buy more, I pay more money. So this is an example of direct proportion. Now there's an easy way I like teaching my students on how to solve direct proportion. So we're going to do it together. So six biscuit equal to 180 naira. Okay, then 8 biscuit will be equal to, let's say, x, because we don't know. Now if you discover in direct proportion, this multiplies this, okay, divided by this. That's the easy way to solve direct proportion. You don't need to stress yourself about nothing. When you have direct proportion, always multiply the two down. Okay, it could be here, it could be down here, it could be down here, but the two that has numbers, this one, I can't multiply this with this because this has an unknown. Okay, this has an unknown, so I multiply this by this, so it becomes 180 times 8, and I divide by this guy, which is 6. Okay, so I can say 6 here, 1, 6 into 18, 3 into 0, 0. So I have 3 times 30 times 80, 240. Okay, so 8 biscuits will cost 240 naira. So it is obvious that you can see that this is an example of direct proportion, because the 6 biscuit is 180 naira. So if I increase the biscuit to 8, as you can see, then my amount of money increases to 240 from 180. This is a simple example of direct proportion. So we're going to take the other example, which is inverse proportion. Okay, let's go back to our question pad. It says it takes 4 men 5 days to dig a trench. How long will it take 10 men if they are working at the same rate? Now, it is obvious that the more men, the lesser the time it will take for them to do the work. So if the more men, the lesser time, then we know that this is an example of inverse proportion. So we go back. It takes 4 men 5 days to dig a trench. So I have 4 men Okay, 4 men equal to 5 days. Okay, then how long will it take 10 men? Okay, so 10 men is equal to, now for, remember, for direct proportion I said this multiplies this, like you do it like this, but in inverse proportion you multiply this two, that's the 2 on top, and divided by this one. That's the difference. So I'm going to say 4 times 5 over 10. Okay, 5 here 1 and 5 here is 2, right? 2 here 1 and 2 here is 2. So it will take 10 men 2 days to dig that trench or do that setting work. So you can obviously see now that direct and inverse proportion, let's check. If 4 men is 5 days, so if I increase the men that are doing the work to 10, then the days to do it is going to reduce to 2. You see, an increase in the men, which is the labor, brings